Welcome to Creative Brews. I'm Kristen, and this is your weekly dose of creativity, where photography, design, and life come together. So, grab your favorite drink, and let's talk about what's brewing. Not every entrepreneur with standards is difficult. Not every boundary is bad customer service. And not every no means someone has an ego problem. The second you stop saying yes to everything, people start looking at you differently. Suddenly, you're too much, too picky, or hard to work with. But are you actually difficult? Or are you finally operating with clarity? So, in today's episode, as you can tell by the title, we're going to be talking about the difference between being hard to work with versus simply knowing your worth. And sometimes when you're operating from a place of alignment, sometimes it can be perceived as you're being too picky, you're hard to work with, what's going on, or you're too much or something like that. But you're actually not being too much, too picky, or hard to work with. You are actually operating from the place of clarity and alignment, and those two things within business are highly, highly, highly important. And I don't know, I feel like I've kind of sort of experienced this sort of in a roundabout way. So that's why and plus I thought it would be interesting to talk about anyway. And maybe to offer some tidbits for other entrepreneurs or small businesses or business owners in general. As well as I really think there's a real difference, a very real difference between being hard to work with and knowing your worth in your business or within business, period. And sometimes, somewhere along the way, those two things started getting confusing or maybe muddled, especially for creatives and entrepreneurs, as I've said, small business owners, and even if you've been in your business for quite a while. And people who finally stopped overextending themselves and stuff like that. So that's sort of in a generalized way, or in a generalized roundabout way, what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. So, grab you a drink, get you a coffee, a little bite to eat, and let's go ahead and get started. And I feel like today's episode perfectly kind of ties into the two little series that I've been doing here on my podcast. Those two being Protect Your Frequency and Align Design Wisdom. And in those two series, I talk about basically steps and why it's important to protect your frequency, what that means and stuff like that. And also, and for Align Design Wisdom, that's more so about business topics, in a generalized way, what exactly Align Design Wisdom means, or operating from a place of alignment and stuff like that within business. So those are more business topics. So I'm going to talk about hard to work with and what that actually means. So this phrase gets thrown around so casually, I feel like, in business, and I feel like this is something that if someone, obviously if they don't really know you, or maybe sometimes you could come across as being hard to work with, when in general all you're trying to do is operate from a place of alignment. Does this align with my business, my brand, and your voice, right? So, and especially online, I kind of feel like you're hard to work with. It gets thrown around so easily because I feel like, again, people don't really get to know you and your business before working with you, maybe. So, but the truth is that it can mean a lot of different things depending on, again, who's saying it and if they know you or if they know your brand and your business. Now, this isn't to knock some people, because some founders and some businesses are hard to work with. Some of them do have an ego problem. Some of them, there's all kinds of things. So I'm not saying that, they're just being hard to work with and that's being thrown around so easily and stuff like that. I guess I'm just talking about sort of the phrase of hard to work with versus knowing your worth. You can tell, let me word it like this. You can tell when someone is being hard to work with versus them knowing their worth. And how you can tell that is by the conversations that are the meetings, whichever. So in the conversations / business meetings, you can tell when someone's operating from a place of ego versus, does this align with what I'm trying to do as far as my business goals go. Sometimes someone genuinely is difficult. So I'm not saying that everybody is just saying everybody is being hard to work with, if that makes any sense. So, yes, it could, and this could even stem from poor communication, unrealistic expectations, lack of accountability, inability to collaborate, constant defensiveness this is basically some examples, I guess you could say, of someone who is being, genuinely hard to work with. But other times, I'm sort of talking about the other times where people use hard to work with when someone has clear boundaries, values their time, charges appropriately, refuses to over-deliver for free, asks for clarity, protects their creative process, and doesn't tolerate disrespect. And that's where the conversation gets interesting. So this is what I'm talking about. So all the examples I just gave, that's what I'm talking about. And again, I probably could have added operating from a place of alignment, because what I've come to realize is that, especially in the business side of things, people are all about, you've got to be quick, you've got to talk to everybody, you want to appeal to everybody, you got to act quickly and stuff like that. And I get that, because, yeah, you can't just, sit around and be like, oh, well, and you can't really be slow about things, because you want people to know that, that you're serious and that you mean what you say and stuff like that. I guess to add to that, but you also want to make sure that you're not being so quick about things where you're just saying yes to everything, or maybe you're trying to collaborate with a lot of different businesses, or maybe a few different businesses, and you kind of lose your vision or your messaging or the reason why you started in the first place. So there's a difference between acting quickly and feeling like you're having to act quick. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Yeah, there's a difference between feeling like you have to work with everybody in the room versus working with maybe a handful of people in the room. When you act from a place of, I have to say yes to everything, you dilute your business. People will not respect you. Businesses will not, other businesses that you're trying to work with will not respect you. And that's not saying that, oh, they're being mean and all this other stuff. No, it's because you're spreading yourself too thin. This kind of leads into my next point here, because a lot of entrepreneurs, especially creatives, were conditioned to believe that being easy to work with means always being available, always saying yes, acting quickly, constantly accommodating, shrinking themselves to keep opportunities. But accessibility and professionalism are not the same thing. So I really want you to hear that. Sit with that for a minute. Again, you can be kind and have standards. You can be collaborative and still protect your peace, or rather, like what I like to say, protect your frequency. So just kind of think of it from this angle a little bit here. I feel like this angle will kind of help. But who benefits when your business has no boundaries? Usually not you. It's just a one-sided relationship there, right? We're going to go ahead and move into the ego versus self-worth. This is where nuance matters, and this is a difference between operating from ego and operating from alignment and self-respect. And see, sometimes, and that's actually what started this episode, is operating from alignment and self-worth. I guess you could kind of change self-worth into like your business respect, and stuff like that. So that's basically what started today's episode and the beginnings of me thinking about this and stuff like that. Again, as I've said before, in my notepad on my phone, I have an ongoing list of things that I jot down that I think are interesting. And that's basically, in a nutshell, how I come up with my episodes. Because I know I get asked that quite a bit. I get asked, how do I come up with my episode topics? And what's the other one? How do I start a podcast and stuff like that? So, anyways, let's get back into it. So yes, sometimes when you're operating from a place of alignment and self-worth, it can come across as you having an ego issue. So to people out there who, especially in the business world, I kind of feel like in the world, period, if they don't know about mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is different than religion. That's a future topic that I plan on talking about, maybe. I don't know. I haven't really sat down and thought about it. But I think it would be very interesting because you can practice mindfulness without it being religious, if that makes sense. Now, yes, the two do cross over, and you can make your mindfulness as religious as you want to. Again, I've already gotten off topic twice. So, this is funny. I am actually recording this at like 1 in the morning because I kind of fell asleep early with our son, and so anyways. So yes, sometimes it can sound like, wow, that person has an ego problem, they're hard to work with, when really, no, they don't have an ego problem. They're just acting from a place of alignment. So ego in business, if you want to know the differences and what they each sort of sound like, here's some examples. So ego in business often sounds like I know everything, refusing feedback, taking constructive criticism personally, needing control over every detail, believing clients should just trust the vision without communication, and acting emotionally reactive instead of grounded. But self-worth sounds different. Knowing your worth sounds like this project no longer aligns. That timeline isn't suitable. I can't lower my pricing below what's fair. I want this collaboration to feel mutually respectful. I care about quality more than people pleasing. These are not ego. They're actually discernment. And honestly, a lot of small business owners hit a phase where they start realizing, I built this business to create freedom, but somewhere along the way, I became emotionally available to everyone. Somewhere along the way, you lose your vision, kind of forget the reason why you started in the first place. And that realization changes everything. And I don't know about you, but when I started my business now a year or so ago, I basically, it's almost like I thought of it in a way of, you owe this to yourself to try to create, well, not try, but create your business for freedom. That's not to say that, well, I'm never going to work in my business and, I've got an ego problem and all this other stuff. So, no, that's actually setting a future goal. If you're creating a business and if you're a business owner, whether you're small, entrepreneur, big business, medium business, it doesn't matter. If you create this business and you continue working within your business, that's great. I'm not saying that you should just stop working in your business and, hire people and stuff like that, because if it doesn't make sense for your business, then, it just doesn't make sense. But we all start with a vision, and sometimes the vision gets lost. Sometimes you wake up one day and you're like, wow, I have spent the last 5 years or however long creating this business, and now I feel trapped within my own business. And that is, I feel like that's a bad wake-up call, if that's the right wording. I think you kind of get what I'm saying here. So, anyways, let's keep moving here. So, why trying to work with everyone dilutes your brand? This is one of the biggest mindset shifts entrepreneurs need to make. And this is also another reason why I decided to talk about today's episode, because I recently got faced with, or had to think about, I guess that's probably the better wording. Yeah, in the beginning, most businesses try to appeal to everyone because they're afraid of missing opportunities. And a lot of times this is how it's so easy to, it's almost like a slippery slope way to kind of just start saying yes to everyone. You kind of back up for a minute and say, wow, this doesn't align with my business, or my business goals, or my business voice, or your brand voice, your brand period. So, that saying, like, I kind of feel like when new business owners first start out, they're like, oh, I've made the business, now, let's start booking clients, and, you book maybe 1 or 2 clients, and then, you're like, well, I don't want to miss this opportunity, let's just say yes anyway, and it doesn't really align with me, but they said that they only needed XYZ, that should be easy enough, because it's a quick client, and you want to say yes, and they claim they don't want a lot, but then not a lot turns into too much. So that's exactly what I'm saying here. Just because you're looking for clients, and just because maybe you're a new business, doesn't mean you need to say yes to every opportunity, because again, a misaligned client can cost quite a bit when you stop to think about it. But eventually, trying to serve everyone starts creating problems, like I said, basically. So your messaging becomes vague, your content loses personality, your offers become unclear, your audience gets confused, your work starts feeling disconnected from you. And see, I think a successful business, whether you're new or not, I think it should be an extension of you. I'm not saying that your business needs to be you, because that's not going to fit for everybody. And that's not for everybody. But you shouldn't be in the business of making money. You shouldn't be in the business of, I don't know, trying to win people over. You shouldn't be in the business of talking to everybody and appealing to everybody. So yeah, the craziest part, the more generic you become trying to attract everyone or trying to talk to everyone, the harder it becomes for the right people to find you. So alignment creates clarity. Desperation creates noise. And again, when you're acting from a place of alignment, whether you're acting from a place of alignment or desperation, people can tell. Okay? So your brand becomes stronger when your values are clear. Your communication is intentional. Your boundaries are consistent. And your audience understands what you stand for. And they understand what your business does or offers. Not everyone is supposed to resonate with your business, because your business is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And that's actually healthy branding. And for some people, that's not going to feel right. But again, it is healthy branding. So here's something to reflect on, maybe think about. Are you building a brand that reflects your vision, or one that constantly shapeshifts to avoid rejection? Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about misaligned clients and opportunities. This is something entrepreneurs don't talk about enough, I kind of feel like. So not every opportunity is meant for you, like I sort of touched on in the last segment. And not every paying client is a good fit. Sometimes the issue isn't that someone is bad, it's simply mismatched expectations, communication differences, value differences, energy, incompatibility, lack of trust, and different working styles. But when entrepreneurs operate from scarcity, they ignore those red flags because they don't want to lose money or momentum. Or maybe, they're acting from a place of desperation with scarcity. And let me tell you, if you're desperate and you're fearful, that's not a good spot to be in. And that's actually where burnout starts. So here's some points maybe to think about. But I think they're pretty important to say. A misaligned opportunity can cost more than it pays. And 9 times out of 10, it does. Just because you offer a 10% discount or something like that. Like even offering discounts to try to get clients can often create a misaligned opportunity, and it can cost you more not offered the discount in some ways, So again, I'm gonna back up and kind of touch on something I said before, which is if it doesn't make sense for your business, don't do it. If it doesn't feel right for your business, don't do it. And that is easier said than done. So, and again, if you are a business owner and you're acting from a place of scarcity and maybe you're kind of fearful and, you're trying to appeal to everybody, you are not going to be respected. It's hard to have respect for someone when, you're kind of all over the place, right? So anyways, again, it's going to cost you more for a misaligned opportunity, a misaligned client. So not just financially here, that's not totally what I'm talking about, not monetarily, but mentally and creatively too. It can make you resent your business, doubt your creativity, overwork yourself, lose confidence in your own process, and water your vision down. Sometimes protecting your business means saying no before resentment ever has the chance to build. And I know for some people who's tuning in, they're like, yeah, well, I mean, what do I do? Just, if it doesn't align with me, I just say no. Like, no, you don't have to be mean about it. Like, it's kind of like whenever you're building boundaries, which I feel like that word kind of gets a bad rep because people use boundaries as building walls. And that's not what I'm talking about here. Like, if you come across a misaligned client, you don't have to be disrespectful, mean, or anything like that. You can just simply stay true to who you are as the business that you're running and your message. And usually people will respect that a hell of a lot more than you saying yes to everybody and getting burnt out, and maybe you don't deliver what you promised. So that's the worst thing that you could do, is to water your vision down, act from a place of scarcity, and be burnt out and kind of frazzled and frayed at the ends, and you kind of have a nervous breakdown. You know what I mean? Like, that's gonna give you a bad reputation versus someone who's like, hey, maybe you met with a potential client, y'all sat down over coffee or whatever the case is, y'all had a business meeting, and within that meeting, you're like, well, this actually doesn't align with my business. Or, I thought they wanted something else, something like that. So it's all about being honest and holding the clarity, holding the honesty. And if you, do that again in a respectful way, usually people will say, they might not be happy in the beginning, but they will respect, what you're saying. So, and they'll respect the clearness and stuff like that. So, anyways, so again, I kind of just touched on boundaries, but boundaries are part of being professional. So professionalism and boundaries are, I feel like, a good part of any kind of business owner. Boundaries are often framed like they're emotional walls, like I said. So they're kind of framed as, I'm building these walls. But no, healthy boundaries actually create better experiences for everyone involved. So that looks like contracts, office hours, communication expectations, revision limits, payment structures, clear timelines. Those are not signs of being difficult. Those are signs of a business being mature. Because boundaries create, again, clarity, consistency, trust, sustainability, and all of that. And honestly, entrepreneurs who never establish boundaries usually end up building businesses they secretly hate. Or they secretly resent running. And they're probably not going to last. So, again, the goal isn't to become unavailable. The goal is to become intentional. And I think those two things, again, when you're when you're acting from a place of alignment and you have boundaries and you're also being intentional about all this stuff, it can come across as, wow, that person is always unavailable. They're, they seem hard to get a hold of and stuff like that. And no, like, again, there's a difference between being hard to reach and being hard to talk to versus someone who's being intentional and has boundaries. Alright, so I believe that basically is everything I wanted to touch on, so I'll end with this. Not everyone is meant to work with you, and honestly, that's a good thing. The more aligned your business becomes, the more intentional your relationships, clients, collaborations, and opportunities become as well. Your job isn't to be universally accepted. Your job is to build something real, sustainable, and aligned with who you actually are. And when those two things coincide, I feel like that's, in a nutshell, what makes a good business owner. Again, you don't need to be easy to access to be valuable. And also, you want to be respected within the business community. So, with all that being said, if this resonated with you, or if you know an entrepreneur, small business owner, or a business owner, period, you should send this their way. Maybe there's some things in today's episode that they really need to hear. And as always, I am still having a lot of fun doing these episodes and stuff. I know it's been a while since I've done a visual episode. Because I usually try to do on YouTube a visual with the episode. But anyways, hopefully soon I will be able to get back on the visual part of it. But it's just a lot easier to be able to just sit down and record and not really worry about the environment. Anyways, and I think a lot of parents out there will understand what I'm saying, but anyways, I hope you all are having fun as well with these episodes and stuff like that. I hope they're hitting home for some people. Maybe some people need to hear these things. I think so. Especially because I have gotten some good feedback back. That makes sense. That, some people are like, wow, this is gold, and stuff like that. So, anyways, thank you so much for the support as always. Be sure to check out all the links below in the show notes, as well as my book, The Daily Divine, a book of soulful truths and everyday wisdom. It's a physical, it's an ebook, as well as narrated by me. So, yes. Again, I hope you all have a fantastic week. And I will see you all, sort of, in the next episode. Bye!